Hi guys, Josh here, aka Beards and Books. Today I'm doing a video on books that I wish I had had the chance to read as a teenager. Hope you enjoy. So guys, something I've talked about a couple of times on my channel is the fact that in my late teens to early 20s, I really didn't read a lot of books. I went through a big reading slump, and when I say slump, I mean I literally probably read 1 or 2 books a year. I lost my love with it a little bit, and I think it didn't help that at the time I didn't really know what books I should be reading and what books I would enjoy reading. Since getting back into my books and getting into BookTube, obviously I'm reading more and more, and I've just found there are so many books that I would have loved to have read as a teenager. Now, full disclosure, some of these books wouldn't have been out when I was a teenager, so I couldn't have read them anyway. But this is a video purely about books that I think I would have loved as a teenage me. So these are books that teenage Josh would have loved, and if any of you have got teenagers out there that have a similar taste, these could be ones they'd enjoy too. First up in a series I've talked about a couple of times on my channel is the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children series by Ransom Riggs. I love this series. Now, when I properly started reading about 2 years ago, this was one of the first books I picked up. I'd seen the trailer for the film that was coming out. I thought it looked really interesting. I started reading the book and I fell in love straight away. So this book follows a bunch of characters who are known as peculiars, who essentially have superpowers. They're like the Gothic X-Men. That's the way I describe them. The sci-fi twist to this story, without trying to give away too much, is that the peculiars are hunted down and they are chased through time. So they live in loops, essentially. So they live in certain time periods where they can't be touched. This isn't a big spoiler. This is stuff you see either on the back or within the first couple of chapters, so don't worry. But it's got such a unique set of characters. The main character, although slightly whiny and slightly annoying at the start, really grows on you. It really grew on me as a person. There's a lot of really good twists as the series goes on. So there's 3 books at the minute, with the 4th book, A Map of Days, coming out later in 2018. So it's a perfect time to pick up the series. They're all relatively short books, but really enjoyable. If you've watched the film and you didn't enjoy it, don't judge the book. The film and the book are different. They changed a lot of characters, they changed powers certain characters had, and they changed certain plots to the story for the film. I don't know what Tim Burton was doing, but I'm sure Tim Burton, he thinks he knows. I would have loved this as a teenager. I love this as an adult, so I know full well I would have loved it. Definitely one to pick up if you haven't already. Next up, Armada by Ernest Cline. So I am a big gamer. I love storytelling in general, which I find books and games do on a really similar level. Games is just obviously you play it yourself rather than reading it. So I read Ready Player One by Ernest Cline last year and I loved it again because of the gaming side. But then I picked up Armada and I didn't think it was possible, but I actually prefer this over Ready Player One. I think Armada is better written. I think the story is done in a better way, and in a way that is, for me, it's more enjoyable. It's more game focused. I think if you're not a gamer, or you don't at least have an element of enjoyment in game, and I don't know if Armada would be for you, is the honest answer, because the story really focuses on gaming. So the story of Armada is about a boy called Zach Lightman, which is just the perfect superhero name, who comes from a single parent background. One day when he's in school, he looks out of his school window and he thinks he sees an alien spaceship in the corner of his eye. So as the story goes on, we start to realise that the planet is under attack and under threat from aliens, and there is a certain bunch of people, such as Zach, who are brought in by the government to try and help fight back again. This isn't spoilers, this is all stuff that you'll see early on or on the back, and it's about the characters' fight to save humanity, but it's, as I said, it's very gamey based. If you've read anything by Ernest Cline, you won't be surprised to hear that. There's a lot of really good twists and turns in this, and this is actually a relatively emotional book as well. There's a lot of family ties, a lot of family drama, and a lot of stuff that, if you're anything like me, you'll really enjoy. Ernest Cline writes simple books, but I think they're really enjoyable books. If you're a gamer, definitely one to pick up, and like I said, this is one that teenage me, at the time where I was more into games than books, would have absolutely adored. Next up, one I've talked about again quite a few times, is the Mortal Engines series by Philip Reeves. So I've read the first 2 books in the Mortal Engines quartet. We'll definitely be picking up the other 2. You know what it's like, TBRs get out of control, I haven't had the chance yet. So these are being made into films by Peter Jackson soon. Well, at least the first one is, and then I think depending on how well that does, the rest will be made as well. So The world of Mortal Engines is set years in the future where global warming and earthquakes and such have made the Earth pretty much uninhabitable. So all of the major cities of the world become what's called traction cities. So they are cities on wheels. So take London, for example, being British myself. London is put on wheels and it then moves around the globe to avoid these areas of global warming where they're more likely to be affected by earthquakes and other aspects. The problem with that is all the other cities of the world follow suit, and eventually every city is classed as a traction city. Now, why that's a problem is because every city then fights for scraps and for survival. So the big cities are trying to eat the little cities to survive. So it's got a really cool steampunk vibe. It's definitely a unique book. It's one I've been recommending to a lot of people through BookTube, and it's one, again, I know I would have loved at any age, essentially. Definitely one you should pick up and try if you're interested in a YA, sci-fi, steampunk, elements of fantasy book. Definitely try it before the film. If you think you want to watch the film, definitely read the book. Philip Reeve did a really good job. So next up is a book that I surprised myself at just how much I enjoyed it, and that's The Knife of the Never Letting Go, which is the first book in the Chaos Walking trilogy. So I only heard about this after I heard about the film. So I heard that Tom Holland, Spider-Man, legend, was going to be playing the lead character in the Knife of Never Letting Go film. So I started looking into it. I thought it sounded really interesting. I hadn't read anything by Patrick Ness at the time either, so I wanted to try something different. I read the book and I absolutely fell in love. So if any of you haven't heard of The Knife of Never Letting Go, again, it's set in the future where the Earth has become uninhabitable and people from the Earth have been sent out to colonize other planets, essentially. So the people that we follow in this story have never set foot on Earth. They have their own version of the Earth, and where they are, for reasons that are unexplained at the start of the story, any man in this world projects his thoughts. So I'm sure you can imagine the conversations that come from that. So if you were standing next to me in this world, you would hear my thoughts, and if you were a fellow man, I'd hear your thoughts. So it's a really interesting story. The place where the main character grows up is also only male. There are no females, and that is explained because of the virus that means your thoughts are projected killed women. Now, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because there's a lot of twists down the line and it would be complete spoilers, and I don't want to ruin it for you because you should definitely pick this up. It's a 3-part series. It's absolutely brilliant. It is the one book that's had me close to crying. I didn't cry. There's a certain character in there that does die, and that's not a spoiler because you don't know which character it is, and it was super emotional. I love this series. I've got the second book, The Asking the Answers, waiting to go. It's just, again, you know what it's like. You can't read them all. Highly, highly recommend. Any YA, sci-fi, fantasy fans, definitely pick this up. This is one that I think a lot of people would enjoy because there are elements of romance, there's big family stories, there's just so much you can get your teeth into, and I know me at any age would have loved it. And last but not least, probably the most underrated book on this little list is the Ravensgate series. So it's the Power of Five series. Ravensgate is the first book by Anthony Horowitz. This is brilliant. So I picked this up in my local charity shop just because I thought the cover looked cool, and I've recently read a bit of Anthony Horowitz's work and I actually really enjoyed it. Wasn't sure what to expect, and I absolutely love this book. So this book is relatively old. It came out in 2005, so it's one of the rare books that I could have actually read as a teenager because I'm getting quite old, you see, and most of these wouldn't have been out at that point, but this one would. And this is such a good book. Definitely underrated for me. So the story of Ravensgate, we follow a teenager who's had quite a broken background. He comes from a family where his parents died relatively young. He's moved between foster homes, and then he eventually settles through a government project called the Leaf Project, where he's fostered in the countryside, essentially. Everything seems good. The woman that adopts him is quite strict and sort of military-like, I suppose, is the way to word it, to try and get him back on the straight and narrow. But as the story goes on, we realise that the town is essentially it's like a cult town, essentially. And I don't want to give too much away, but we follow the main character as he starts to realise that he maybe isn't normal, and maybe there are sort of aspects of him that are different to your normal teenagers, and the cult town that he lives in. We follow their story of how they try and essentially bring the devil back. It's a bunch of demons called the Old Ones who lived on the earth millions of years ago, but the Power of Five put them away. Definitely a series I will be carrying on with. It's one I can't recommend highly enough to people who enjoy YA fantasy sci-fi series with elements of horror, given that it's about cults and, end of the world. Really, really good. It's an old book, so it should be one you'd be able to find relatively cheap. It's one I'd highly recommend. Guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Like I said, this is a bit of a rant for me about books that I wish I'd had the chance to read as a teenager. If any of you have teenage boys that you think might enjoy this, definitely let me know if you have any questions, but there's such good books, I'd recommend any of them. I really hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. As always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you have. I will leave links to my social media below if you want to speak to me more, and I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.